How are you guys doing? Today is Friday, November 12th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Marcell Ozuna, the elite designated hitter who currently is not assigned to an MLB team right now, is turning 31 today, and many are not aware as to the extent of when he can play baseball next. I really could get into it, but that's not really what this show is about. But in the meantime, at the beginning of the year, I did list Marcell Ozuna as one of the elite baseball players in baseball coming into this year, and I still believe that to be true, especially when you look specifically within his game. If you've ever seen him play, he is an amazing power hitter. On defense, he can be pretty valuable, but the thing about it is he is a very patient and he is a very amazing and dynamic hitter whenever he's on. And his last full season for the Atlanta Braves, he was more than on, and he was definitely able to pick up some silverware along the way. So just to give a little bit of background, Marcell Ozuna is a Dominican-born baseball player. So he would originally start playing in the Dominican Republic. He would sign with the Florida Marlins in 2008 with a $50,000 bonus, essentially. And when he signed in 2008, this is when he was a teenager. He would eventually working his way through the minors. He would get called up for the first time to the MLB in 2013 when he was 22. In his very first season in the MLB in 2013, he would play 70 games in a season in which the Miami Marlins finished with a 62-100 record. Spoiler alert, the Miami Marlins did not make the playoffs a single season that Ozuna was there. But his first season was also the Rookie of the Year season of Jose Fernandez, the Miami Marlins pitcher who died tragically in that accident. But regardless, in the 70 games that Marcell Ozuna played in the 2013 season, he would finish with 73 hits. He had more hits than games played that season. He had 31 runs on the season. He would also add 17 doubles, a trio of home runs, 32 RBIs. He finished with a 265 batting average, a 303 on base percentage, and a 389 slugging percentage, combining for a 693 OPS, which is a very solid debut season when he first came on the scene. Not many people were completely aware of who he was, but at the same time, doing all this at the age of 22 is a very impressive feat and not one to just scoff at. Following his very first season with Miami, he would come back for his very first full season with the Miami Marlins in 2014. In his age 23 season, he would go on to play 153 games for a Miami Marlins team that would end up going 77-85, winning 15 more games than they had won the prior season. In the 153 games he played, he finished with 152 hits on the year, one less hit than games played. He had 72 runs at the end of the year. He finished with 26 doubles, first time he eclipsed 25. He had 23 home runs alongside 85 RBIs in his first full MLB season. He finished with a 269 batting average, 4 points higher than his debut season. He finished with a 317 on-base percentage combined with a 455 slugging percentage, making a 772 OPS. Not much hardware after his 2014 season, but after his 2014 season, many people were starting to take his game a little seriously. And then in September of that season, he would go on to tie a franchise record as he hit a home run in 4 consecutive games. And going into his third season with the Miami Marlins, his age 2015 season, he would play 123 games in a season where the Marlins went 71-91. They lost 6 more games than they had won the previous season. Marcell Ozuna would end up getting sent to the AAA after he went hitless in 9 of 10 games in a stretch. However, while he was working his way back up and trying to find his way, he would finish with 119 hits in the 123 games that he played, 47 runs on the year. He would hit 27 doubles, which at that point would be a career high in doubles. He had 10 home runs, 44 RBIs. He would finish with a 259 batting average, which at that point was the lowest he'd ever have in his career. His 308 on-base percentage and 383 slugging percentage combined for a 691 OPS, which, other than this most recent season, is the lowest on-base percentage plus slugging combination that he's ever had in his season. But of course, following this, he would experience what it meant to be one of the best players in baseball. That was probably his lowest point in his MLB career. Following his first 3 seasons in Miami, he would come back for his age 25 season in 2016. And in his age 25 season, he would play 148 games in a season where the Marlins finished with a 79-82 record, the most wins that the Marlins would have in Ozuna's tenure there, while they finished third in the National League. Marcell Ozuna would be named an All-Star in this Miami Marlins team. At the conclusion of the season, he would finish with 148 hits in 148 games. This would be the second time in his MLB career he's at least he's had at least as many hits as he's had games played. His 75 runs that season was the most he'd had in an MLB season by then. He would finish with 23 doubles on the year, as well as 23 home runs to match his career high at the time. He had 76 RBIs, the second time he topped 75. He finished with a 266 batting average and a 773 OPS, which at the time was his career high, as he had a 321 on-base percentage, which at that time was a career high, and his slugging percentage was just 3 points below his career high. And like I said, he would be named an All-Star for the very first time, despite the fact that the Marlins would not make the playoffs at all. Being named an All-Star is, of course, a very big honor, especially in this game. This would transition to Marcell Ozuna's final season with the Miami Marlins in 2017. It is his age 26 season. He would go on to play 159 games in a season in which the Miami Marlins would finish with a 77-85 record. They won 2 less games than the prior season, but they actually finished second in the standings. That's the highest relative to their other teams that they've been since in Marcell Ozuna's tenure. This would also be Giancarlo Stanton's MVP season, the season where he hit for like 57 home runs. And Marcell Ozuna even got 15. He was even 15th in MVP votes in the National League this season. In what would possibly be known, in what is definitely known as his best hitting season for the Miami Marlins, he would finish with 191 hits in 159 games, both, of course, career highs. He finished with 93 runs on the season. That's a career high. He finished with 30 doubles on the season. That's also a career high, the only time he's ever hit the 30 double threshold. He would finish with 37 home runs, also a career high. 124 RBIs, also a career high. He finished with a 312 batting average, which for a full season is a career high for him, excluding the 2020 shortened season. He finished with a 376 on base percentage, which, other than the shortened season, is a career high for him. He finished with a 548 slugging percentage, which is a career high for him except for 2020. He finished with a 924 OPS, which is the highest OPS he's ever had except for the 2020 season. And the only time other than that he's even he's gone above 800. He would finish with 336 total bases on the year. He would in addition to making his second straight All-Star game, he would be given his first and only Gold Glove that he's ever been given in his MLB career. And he was given his first ever Silver Slugger, the only Silver Slugger that he's won as an outfielder. Following his amazing virtuoso 2017 performance that didn't even see a playoff appearance, he would end up getting signed by the St. Louis Cardinals. Actually, he got traded to the St. Louis Cardinals for a bunch of players. One of the players involved in that trade was Zach Gallen, one of the starting pitchers for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and Sandy Alcantara, who is currently on the Marlins right now, just to give a sense of, just for context sake. But regardless, Marcell Ozuna found a new home in St. Louis. And actually, to be completely frank, since he left Miami, he has not been an all-star. But he still has shown that he's been one of the MLB's best players since he left Miami for St. Louis. His very first year in St. Louis would be his age 27 season, his sixth season in the MLB. And in 2018, he would play 148 games in a season in which the St. Louis Cardinals finished with an 88-74 record. This would be the very first time that Marcell Ozuna played for a team that had a winning record. But in 2018, the Cardinals would fail to make the playoffs. In the 148 games he played, he finished with 69 runs. He had 163 hits in the 148 games he played. That would be the third year in a row and the fourth time in his first 6 years in the league he had at least as many hits as games played. He finished with 16 doubles on the season. He would finish with 23 home runs on the year for the third time in his first 6 years. His 88 RBIs would be the second most that he had ever put up in his MLB career at that moment. And he would finish with a 280 batting average, which was his second highest in his career at that point. He finished with a 325 on base percentage, which, other than his final season in Miami, was his career high at that point. He had a 433 slugging percentage on the year to combine for a 758 OPS. And even though he wasn't named an all-star, he was a very vital part of that St. Louis Cardinals team. And even though the Cardinals wouldn't make it this year, they would go on to make the playoffs next year and actually kind of cause some damage. In his second and final season in the St. Louis Cardinal uniform, Marcell Ozuna played his age 28 season in 2019, playing 130 games in a season in which the St. Louis Cardinals would win the National League Central. This would be the first time Marcell Ozuna would be on a team that won their divisional title and even made the playoffs, and it would come in his eighth, or I guess this would go on to happen in his seventh season in the MLB. In the 130 games he played, he finished with 117 hits, ending his 3-season streak of having at least as many hits as games played. He would finish with 80 runs on the season, which at that point was the second most runs he'd ever scored in an MLB season. He had 23 doubles, 29 home runs, and 89 RBIs. His 29 home runs and 89 RBIs were both the second most he'd had in a season at that point. However, his 241 batting average was the lowest he'd ever put together in an MLB season, excluding this most recent season. He finished with a 328 on-base percentage and a 472 slugging percentage. His 472 slugging percentage in 2019 was a career high, except for his last year in Miami. He will go on to finish with an 800 OPS. That will be the second highest OPS he'd ever put together in his career at that point. And even though he wasn't named an all-star for the second year in a row, he would go on to help the Cardinals finish the season with the best record in their division. They would go on to beat the Braves in 5 in the National League Division Series before getting swept in the National League Championship Series by the eventual World Series champions Washington Nationals. This is also the season where Mike Shildt won the Manager of the Year, but of course that would be the first time that Marcell Ozuna would get a taste of playoff baseball. Following that 2019 season, he would go on to sign a 1-year, $18 million contract with the Atlanta Braves, as the Braves were betting on him due to the National League being able to have designated hitters. And of course, for context, the 2020 season was impacted by COVID in the sense that it shortened the 162-game season to 60 games, and also at the same time it expanded the playoff, but it also meant that teams had to play within their own division. But of course, in the only season that the National League has actually had a designated hitter, Marcell Ozuna would actually be given the ML or the designated hitter award for all of baseball, as he's the only National League player to do so. But looking at his first regular season with the Atlanta Braves, he would play all 60 games in a season in which the Atlanta Braves would go on to finish with a 35-25 record, finishing with the best record in the National League East for the third year in a row. In the 60 games that Ozuna played in, he finished with 77 hits. This would go on to be the fifth time in his 8-year career that he finished with at least as many hits as games played. He led the National League in plate appearances with 267. He had 38 runs in 60 games. He finished with 14 doubles, which is a lot of doubles in 60 games. He finished with the National League lead in home runs and RBIs, as he had 18 home runs and 56 RBIs in 60 games. He would finish with a .338 batting average, which to this day is the highest batting average he's ever put up in a season. His on-base percentage of .431 is the highest that he's ever put together to date in a season. His .636 slugging percentage is also a career high for him, and his OPS was .1067, the only time that his OPS was ever above 1,000 for a season. He would also lead the National League in total bases. This season, they would not give out All-Star nominations. But if they were to give out All-Stars, he would have been named for a third time. But that also plays into part of the reason that he hasn't been named an All-Star in 4 years. He would go on to finish 6th in MVP voting, as he would go on to finish behind his own teammate, Freddie Freeman, as the Braves had a very good season that year. And Ozuna would go on to finish as the only National League player to win the Silver Slugger Award at the designated hitter position. So, of course, very big, very singular, very unique honor for him. And once the Atlanta Braves made the 2020 playoffs, they would have to beat the Reds in the first round, because of course they were the wild card team that they had to beat. They ended up beating the Miami Marlins, Marcell Ozuna's former team. They ended up sweeping them in 5, and then the Braves ended up losing in the National Championship Series to the Los Angeles Dodgers, as the Dodgers ended up winning that game in 7 after the Braves, I believe, held at least a 3-2 series lead, possibly 3-1. But following this 2020 season that saw the Los Angeles Dodgers win, Marcell Ozuna would come back and re-sign with the Atlanta Braves for a 4-year, $64 million deal. He would only go on to play 48 games in a season in which the Atlanta Braves would go on to win not only the division but also the World Series. But in the middle of the season, Marcell Ozuna was put on administrative leave due to domestic violence allegations, and he did not play for the remainder of the season. And I imagine that his suspension will go on to the beginning of this season as well. But he would go on, even though he went on to miss this season, that still does not take away from the fact that coming into the 2021 calendar year, Marcell Ozuna is still one of the best baseball players on earth. But of course, a lot of this, his elite status for this upcoming year is very contingent upon him being able to play this year. And of course, this is not to condone anything of what he did. All I'm saying is that as long as Marcell Ozuna is on a baseball field, he is an elite baseball player. And I think that his numbers more than definitely speak for themselves. And I still see it as very possible that he may come back, and it also is very possible that he may not come back. For the 2021 calendar year, Marcell Ozuna is an elite baseball player as of this very moment. First, I want to thank the Baseball Reference, the ESPN, and MLB websites that I used in order to get the stats and figures for this episode. I, of course, want to thank everyone for listening to all 19 minutes of this piece. I do hope all is well. And if you ever get a chance to watch Marcell Ozuna again, if he ever gets a chance to play, I would recommend doing so. He is a very good baseball player when he does play. And with that said, once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow on Saturday for another episode of The Elite. And of course, until then, I want to thank you all once again for listening to my piece. And I'll catch you with another episode of with an elite individual profile right after this, as it is also Russell Westbrook's birthday as well. Thanks for listening to this piece. I'll catch you with more tomorrow. Peace out.